Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sunday Mystery School number 8. I'm so glad that all of you are here. Hello to everyone who has joined me live on the YouTube live stream, and hello to everyone who is in the Zoom room, members of the channel Mastermind who have gathered here. We're having a little chat with them before getting started here, and we'll have a chance to hear from them again a little bit later in the stream. All right, so our 8th Sunday Mystery School, and this Sunday Mystery School, this episode 8, will be the conclusion of lesson 1 of Neville's original 5-class Masterclass series taught in 1948. And I was looking at the text for today's lesson, and I was seeing how Neville is kind of wrapping up and concluding this first lesson. And remember, this was taught live, so we had a group of people that were gathered. And so he goes through and he shares these Bible stories, these sacred wisdom encodings of the truth of our creative power, the truth that sets us free. And he concludes this lesson by reviewing, by going back and hitting the key points one more time, and then also emphasizing and summarizing exactly what the process is. Now, as I was preparing for Sunday Mystery School this morning, I was reflecting on the power of cycles, to share from my own personal experience. I did something yesterday. I took a class that was a refresher on something that I trained on about 20 years ago. When I was a very young man, I took this particular training, and yesterday I took it again, about 20 years later. And the training was very much the same as what I took 20 years ago. You know, the instructor was different. The circumstances were different. The place that I went to take the training was different. But the content, the material itself was the same. But you know what changed the most in the last 20 years? Me. I'm the one that changed the most in the last 20 years. It was not the same man taking the training as I was 20 years ago when I took the training. And I had the opportunity to really reflect on that, to really reflect on this idea that so many enlightened mystics have shared over the eons, this idea that we tend to live in endlessly repeating cycles. Some of them are the cycles of a day where we find ourselves repeating what we did yesterday today. And there's nothing right or wrong about that, simply an observation. Some of them may be weekly or monthly or annually. You know, we have our annual traditions that a lot of us celebrate in whatever whatever form or shape that may take. A lot of us celebrate annual traditions. And then we also have these longer cycles, such as my 20-year cycle, where I came back for a refresher course on something that I learned 20 years ago. And then there's also these cycles and patterns that perhaps extend beyond a single lifetime. We find ourselves in another life, in another body, in another identity, but perhaps replaying an element of a cycle that we have already lived. And similar to my situation, maybe the names of the people involved have changed. Maybe the location where the drama is taking place has changed, but maybe the theme is largely the same. And perhaps the one element of the story that is most different from one repetition of a cycle to another is ourselves, our identities, who we believe ourselves to be. And in Sunday Mystery School, we have really been exploring the state of being the author, the authority, author, being the wise rulers of a self-governed nation, that self-governed nation being our mind, body, spirit complex, and being in the state of being the wise ruler of that mind, body state, the mind, body, soul, or spirit complex, is also the state of being the author, being the authority of our lives, which also implies taking profound responsibility for the identity that we are embodying. There is an element of each of us that transcends identity. There's an element of each of us, there's an awareness, a consciousness that is present in each one of us that is aware that it is above or beyond or transcends the limitation of a single human identity. And that's, I believe, that awareness, that state that transcends all states, the one that watches our physical human identity embody various states of beings, that watcher, that is our true identity. And when we become aware that we have that element present within ourselves, we grow to the extent where we start to align with and join our awareness with, become one with that state of the watcher, that which is consciousness itself, observing what is happening first in our own mind, body, spirit complex, and then by extension, what is projected out into the world of experience around us. When we really start to become one with that identity, that is when we begin to enter and assume the role of authorship in our reality. Now, what is the benefit of being the author? Well, all of us are the author, whether we're aware of being the author or not. So the benefit is found in the awareness and what being aware of being in the state of author unlocks for our lives. And here in Sunday Mystery School, we like to make this very practical. It's one thing to understand that we are the author. It's a second thing to then choose to be actively the author, meaning to actively write scenes for ourselves to experience. And then it's also, there's something that unlocks when we choose to do this. I like to think of it as being the horizon of potential, or the horizon of possibilities expands. It's like we get a different vantage point. Our perspective expands and increases and is also enhanced. And we become aware that everything that we're experiencing is really just a drama. You know, the various situations, circumstances, and things are plot devices. And there's something about adopting this perspective that sets us free. In a very simple way, we can say that adopting this perspective helps us take this 3D dramatized play that we're all actors in just a little bit less seriously. And there's something about taking the world and the circumstances and the story just a little bit less seriously that can unlock joy in our lives. And I also will take that concept and extend it to just the role of being the author in general. I feel that aligning with this state of being our own authority, our own author, being the writer, the conceiver, right, in this consciousness reality, there's something about being that when we are aware of being that, unlocks joy for our lives. And to bring this little introduction full circle, let's relate this idea back to this concept of living in cycles, right? So it's like when we're not really aware that we are the author, then we can just kind of coast and travel over thoroughly explored plot lines that we've already lived in the past. We're comfortable with them, right? It's like the tried and true tropes in novels or in movies. You know, there's a dictionary of movie tropes that you can go and look at, and you're like, oh, wow, most movies follow one or more of these very common plot lines, very common tropes, you know, that are played out. And again, the character names may change, location where it's happening may change. Maybe the author will get a little bit fancy and, you know, write in some sort of unexpected, you know, slightly exotic element to the story, but it's the same story just being told, you know, with different trappings. And so when we are reviewing cycles and the fact that we are living these patterns, and we choose to not just kind of coast aimlessly in the well-trodden tropes, but rather to embody the state of being the author, now we're unlocking potential. We're unlocking potential. We're unlocking a new horizon of possibilities. We're unlocking, really, the imagination. We're unlocking the imagination. And this is what enables us to begin to live above and beyond the well-trodden paths of the masses, because we have unlocked for ourselves the realm of imagination. We can begin to live lives that really only someone who is imaginatively awake would be able to live, because the well-trodden tropes of the masses are also comfortable, right? They've been explored countless times. They'd be very comfortable plot lines, the ones that, the screenplay writers know are going to be a hit at the box office because they always are. Everybody comes back to watch the same movie, just, with different actors, right? But there's also this opportunity to transcend that, to go to the edge of our comfort zone and perhaps just a little bit beyond. Therapeutic discomfort, as my yoga teacher would say. You go and you find your edge and you learn to walk that balance right on the fine edge of too much discomfort and too much comfort. You're somewhere right in the middle. And when you learn to do this and you learn to be resilient in doing this, meaning that you know that you're in the state of being the author, you're writing new and expanded plot lines of potential for yourself. And then you understand that by very nature of doing that, you're changing, and transcending the well-trodden plot lines. You're living truly an extraordinary life. And you're aware that that implies a lot of change, right? That potentially implies a lot of change. That potentially implies doing things that maybe not all other people will necessarily understand why you're doing them or what the motivation is for doing them. And again, when you're the wise ruler of a self-governed nation, there's something in that implies that we care just a little bit less about what other authors are writing in their lives or what other authors might think about what we're writing for our lives. That's the promise of potential that is woven into this Sunday Mystery School exploration. As I was reading ahead and preparing for the lesson, I also noticed that categorically, Neville tends to use world of Caesar type manifestations to illustrate how to do this, how to be the author. So in other words, would you like a promotion in office? That's one of the examples he'll give today. You're working at your job and ready for promotion. How do you manifest that? Right? Or you're living in one house and you like to live in a different house. How do you manifest that? These are, again, using Neville's language, world of Caesar type things. But I also want to just plant a little seed of potential in today's introduction. And I'd like to offer the possibility, plant the seed of potential, offer the possibility that as the author, with an unlimited palette to choose from, we can also write into our experience things that transcend the world of Caesar. We can write into our experience perspectives or abilities or perceptions, perhaps, that are extraordinary, right? It's like not everything that we manifest has to be these tangible physical things or tangible physical locations. There's even the possibility of writing into the story that we're very, very good at manifesting, right? Writing into the story that this character that we're embodying gets really fluent in the language of creating dreams into reality. That's not a world of Caesar thing. That transcends a world of Caesar thing. That's a state of being the author and being a very competent author. That's or even this idea of being very, very good at anything, right? Being very good at whatever the skill is that you're choosing to be, right? Whatever state you're choosing to embody, being really good at something. That's not necessarily tangible, but it is a potential, right? And so when you really connect to this state of being the author, and you're able to break free from some of the well-trodden tropes, right? Not that there's anything wrong with the well-trodden tropes, but if you're interested in any way in transcending in this lifetime the boundaries or perceived limitations, perhaps as far as you've lived, to date, if you're ready to go beyond that in some way, if you step back from your life and kind of hold it at arm's length and consider it as though you are the author, and you look at this character and you look at the storyline that's been, penned into form so far, and then you add just a little bit of imagination and you consider what are the possibilities here that transcend that which has come before. If I truly were to make my imagination unlimited, what type of life would I be living? Now, doing this requires a boldness, requires a boldness. So there's additional skills here, right? So being free from fear, right? That's something you can write into the storyline of your character as the author. Being bold, brazen impudence, right? These are character qualities that you can write into the state of the character as the author, right? Being just really incredibly blessed, extremely highly successful at anything that you choose to apply yourself to. These are states, elements of states that you can write into the characters, the character that you are living, the character that you're embodying as this dual entity being the author and the actor. You know, you're really working together with the whole set here. Earlier this week, I released a narration of a chapter from one of Neville's books. The book is Seed Time and Harvest. The chapter is titled The Four Mighty Ones. And the four mighty ones that Neville refers to are the four characters, no, four people, we'll say, that are most important, four roles that are most important in the production of a play. And that is the author, the producer, the director, and the actor. And Neville says in this chapter where he's describing these four things, he says, these are not four individual people. These are four elements of each one of us. These four elements live within our own consciousness. They live within our own awareness, but they each perform a specific task. And the end result of those tasks, when coupled with a little bit of imagination, is truthfully an extraordinary life. So that's the introduction for today. That's a little bit of a revelation of exactly what we're doing here at Sunday Mystery School. And we're going to get to the text in just a moment. But before we do, as is our tradition in these gatherings, I'd like to take the opportunity to speak a blessing over all of us who are gathered here today, all of my members in the Zoom room, and also just from a place of respect and appreciation and love and awareness. This is a blessing spoken over all sentient beings. So just join me now. I turn now to go within, drawing my senses inward into the center of my own being. I offer gratitude and appreciation in this moment for the perfection that is this present moment. In gratitude, we accept that we are, and we declare that we are wise souls, growing healthy, youthful minds. Thank you that we are feeling now the presence of life force energy, awakening, enlivening, and making whole our bodies in the physical dimension. Thank you that our relationships are now healed with love, compassion, and understanding. Thank you that we have humbly accepted our power and our responsibility to imagine wisely as the authors and sovereign co-creators of this world we share. Thank you that we are inspired by life-expanding, consciousness-uplifting possibilities manifesting now. We honor the ancestors, each and every ancestor who have walked this path ahead of us. Thank you for the wisdom passed down from the ancients, encoded and woven into the fabric of reality all around us, in the spirit of liberating our hearts and our minds. And thank you that together we welcome the inheritance of our bright and beautiful future. And so it is. Okay. There is a text for today's lesson. It is located in the video description of this Sunday Mystery School video on YouTube. And I'm also going to grab it and put it in the Zoom room for all of you who have joined me in the Zoom room. It will be in the chat. It's not necessary that you look at the Google Doc. I will be reading it to you, but if it's a helpful tool, feel free to do so. We are going to start at the beginning, at the end of page 11. Okay. So Neville is starting his recap of this lesson 1. Okay. And he says, these are the 4 stories I promised you tonight. Okay. So what are the 4 stories? Well, starting back at the beginning, we're going to do a little bit of a review of how far we've come in the last 7 episodes of Sunday Mystery School, exploring this lesson 1. So the first story is Adam falling asleep. Now remember, the whole premise here is that these ancient storytellers dramatized stories that eventually became our scriptures, that encoded and wove into the stories the sacred wisdom about how to set ourselves free. These ancient ancestors were thinking of you and I when they wrote these stories. They were thinking of all of their posterity, and they were thinking of you and I. I know for me, that makes me feel profoundly loved by them, that they cared so much so as to find a way to be sure that the truth that sets you and I free would survive the eons, regardless of how many attempts to change the story or to warp or distort the truth of our being. These stories survived. And that's why you and I are sitting here right now talking about them, because they survived. And that's also why we offer gratitude and appreciation to our ancestors in that opening blessing, because they were thinking of us. And it is so beautiful that we have the opportunity to think of them. You know, I worded that they were thinking of us. Well, time actually is a single present whole, right? There really is no past or future. So the ancestors are thinking of us in this moment, and we are thinking of them in this moment. And these ancestors, these storytellers, discovered that sleep, or state akin to sleep, aided man in making our assumption, right? Aids us in making our assumption because it allows us to obtain the focus while dimming the senses, right? So it allows us to enter that portal state where we can rise above the evidence of the world around us and find entrance into a dimensionally greater window of perception where we can travel to the place where our desire is already realized, and then bring our energy and attention there as the author to then give it the right of birth. Okay, so 4 stories that Neville told in this lesson. The first one is about Adam falling asleep. And this is the first creative act that is written by the storytellers attributed to Adam. He falls asleep. And then out of this state of falling asleep, it says, the Lord God took one of his ribs, and from the rib that he had taken, he made a woman. Okay, so that's the first creative act, again, dramatized in sleep or state akin to sleep. Okay, so that's story number 1. Story number 2 is the 38th chapter of Genesis, where we come across King Judah and Tamar, the beautiful woman, the most beautiful woman, right? Even the word Tamar encodes in that word a palm tree, which is basically, if you're in the desert and you're very thirsty, you're looking for palm trees, because where a palm tree is, there is water. Okay, so even encoded by the storytellers in the name of the daughter, as are all characters in the Bible encoded in this way, is the desire fulfilled. Okay, so that's the second story. We talk about how that story encodes this idea of King Judah pledging to Tamar the ring, the bracelets, and the staff which are the symbols of kingship, right? So you have to give what you desire yourself, which is your awareness, which is your presence, your state of being. Okay. So that's story number two. And the key idea here is man or we truly have one gift that is ours to give, and that is ourselves. Okay. So when we're manifesting a state or manifesting a scene, we put ourselves into that scene and give ourselves to it with abandon. Okay. And that leads into one of the later stories. The third story that Neville covered in this lesson is that of Esau, Isaac, and Jacob. Okay, so Isaac is the old man. His eyes are dim, not really able to see very well. He's ready to die, and he wants to give the blessing of the firstborn. Okay, so he calls, he calls Esau, sends him off hunting. Okay, then Jacob comes with subtlety and deceives Isaac, the father, into giving Jacob the blessing, which otherwise would have belonged to Esau. And we decoded this story to understand that Jacob, the second son, is the desire. Okay, the one, we have what we have, that's Esau, whatever we can sensibly feel, our hairy, state, the hairy world, whatever's currently real for us is Esau. Jacob is smooth-skinned, right? So it's imaginary. There's no hair to it. It just lives in our awareness, okay? But Jacob can deceive Isaac, which is our awareness, into giving Jacob the blessing, right? Which is a right of birth. Okay. And this is again a dramatized, same story being dramatized in a different way. Remember, we were talking about cycles, how everything just keeps coming around again with slightly different characters, slightly different circumstances, but it's the same theme dramatized differently, a well-trodden trope. Okay. Bible's full of them. And Neville's decoding some of these to help us understand this trope and how it's woven in by these skillful storytellers. Okay, so that's story number 3. And story number 4 is from Deuteronomy, the 34th chapter, and it's about Moses. Moses writing his own obituary and going from the plains of Moab to the mountain of Nebo to the top of Pisgah that is over against Jericho. And the Lord showed him all the land of Gilead unto Dan. Okay, so that's the Bible story. And we decoded it that Moab, so Moses, which the name Moses means to draw out. Moab is a contraction of two words that means mother, father. So drawing out or being born from the mother, father, which is your consciousness. Okay, there's no other cause in the world. Your consciousness is the mother, father. And then Nebo is the prophecy, something that you would like or your desire, right? Something that you have conceptualized in your mind. Okay, so it's your wish, your desire, and it's a mountain because it seems impossible, right? It's hard to scale, it's tall, requires a lot of effort subjectively, right, to climb this mountain. Pisgah, to the peak of Pisgah, refers to this idea of contemplation. Okay, so again, the same story told with different characters. Once again, you have this desire, something that you want, and you enter into a state of contemplation. In this case, the contemplation remains until you achieve Jericho, which is the fragrant odor. Remember, for whatever we're contemplating to really take shape to the point where travel has occurred and we actually move to that reality, it has to have sensory aspects to it. It has to have the tones of reality. There has to be something that we're touching, we're tasting, seeing, smelling, hearing. And so the idea in this story of being up against Jericho, the fragrant odor is implying that Moses, which is of course just us, we are in the peak of contemplation, achieving sensory vividness. Okay? And then it says the Lord shows him Gilead, which is the hills of witnesses. This is the world reflecting back to us that which we have become aware of being through contemplation and achieving sensory vividness. Okay? So that's the 4 stories that Neville shared in this masterclass. And Neville says you must apply these stories every day of your life. We're talking about living an extraordinary life. We're talking about being the author. What makes someone an author? Well, they write. An author writes. Okay. A character theoretically does not write. The author writes about the character. Okay. So the state of author is defined as one who writes, one who actively creates through the act of writing. Okay. So Neville says you must apply this act of writing because that's what these stories are telling us to do. They're telling us to write our desires into being and experience them. Okay. Neville says you must do this every day of your life because doing this every day of your life distinguishes you as being the author, as opposed to just being the character, aimlessly wandering and repeating well-trodden tropes. Okay. Neville says, even though the chair on which you are now seated seems hard and does not lend itself to meditation, you can, using your imagination, make this chair the most comfortable chair in the world. Moving on to page 12. Neville says, let me now define the technique as I want you to employ it. I trust each one of you came here with a clear picture of your desire. Do not say your desire is impossible. Truly, there is nothing that is impossible. Do you want your desire? You do not have to use your moral code to realize it, meaning you do not have to use any of the things that you've used in the past, anything that you're used to using, anything that anyone else has used to achieve desires. You don't have to use that to achieve your desire, to realize your desire. He says your desire, this clear picture, is completely outside the reach of your code, right? It's the mountain, right? The mountain of desire, Nebo. Neville says, consciousness is the one and only reality. Therefore, we must form the object of our desire out of our own consciousness. And we've already formed an entire world, entire reality, right? This reality field that we're living in, we've already formed it out of our own consciousness. It is not objective to us, it's subjective. It's something that we created for ourselves to experience. Okay, so Neville is saying, so you've already been doing this. Whatever you desire, do it the same way, meaning form it out of your own consciousness. Make it real for yourself using your own consciousness. Don't try to climb the mountain, step by step by step, carrying this heavy load of, oh, can I realize my desire? No, no, no. Set that aside completely. Become the author. Write it into being. When an author writes a story, where is that story coming from? From the author's own consciousness. Okay. Same principle being applied here. We must form the object of our desire out of our own consciousness. Neville says, people have a habit of slighting the importance of simple things. And the suggestion to create a state akin to sleep in order to aid you in assuming that which reason and your senses deny is one of those simple things that you might slight or not take seriously. However, Neville says, this simple formula for changing the future, which was discovered by the ancient teachers and storytellers and given to us in the Bible, can be proved by all. The first step in changing the future is desire. That means you must define your objective. You must know definitely what you want. Now, this cannot be overemphasized. Okay, a desire in this sense is not a vague sense of success. It's not a vague idea of prosperity. It must be specific. You're the author. You don't just write on the page and then the character became successful and lived happily ever after. It's not good enough, right? We're more imaginative than that. Okay, so we must become specific. And this, again, it's helpful to hold your life at arm's length as the author and review it. Okay, here's the character as I've written it into being so far. What happens next? Where am I taking this character? Where is this character going in life, living an extraordinary life? Where is this character going? And then specifically, what are some events that will happen that will naturally unfold on this journey of this character? Wherever this character is headed, these events are naturally going to be a part of that. Okay. And then get really clear on those events to the point where you can describe them in a scene. And that's step 2. Okay, so first, know what you want, exactly what you want. Define it, not vague. Must be very clear. Step 2, construct an event which you believe you would encounter, your character would encounter, after the fulfillment of your desire. Okay, so you're writing the story of your character, the character experiences this event, and then what happens next? That's where you go with your scene. The event happens, what happens next? That is what you're writing. Giving it the tones of reality using the Four Mighty Ones. Okay, I'm kind of melding lessons together here. If you haven't watched the Four Mighty Ones or listened to it, you need to do so because it's going to give more of a depth and dynamic to this idea of being the author and writing scenes. Okay. So step 2, construct the event that would happen after the fulfillment of your desire. Something that implies the desire is now fulfilled, right? Because it happens after in the timeline. And something which has the action of self predominant. Okay. Action of self predominant. Okay. So remember, Neville, one of the famous stories that he tells is arriving in Barbados and then finding that, according to the world of Caesar, he didn't have a way to get back home. Okay. But he had to get home. So what did he do? He went down to the harbor and he watched the ships and he chose which ship he wanted to come back home on. Okay. And then he went back to his hotel room and he got into the state akin to sleep by reclining on his easy chair. And then in his imagination, right, he went to the end of what would happen after he had secured passage back home. Okay. So the ticket's already in his possession. What would he do next? Well, he would climb the gangplank onto the ship. Right? That's what would naturally happen next in the story. So in his mind's eye, as he's in the state akin to sleep, very relaxed, action of self-predominant, he is climbing up from the tender to the ship on the gangplank. He's just climbing that from the tender, the little boat that takes you out to the big ship. He's climbing that up to the top. And he's doing that over and over again. He's practicing it in his imagination until it takes on the tones of reality, meaning until he feels like he actually did climb it to the top. Okay, so that's what he means by action of self-predominant. Something needs to happen, and you need to be able to repeat it in your mind's eye. Step 3, immobilize the physical body, induce a state akin to sleep. We've talked about this extensively. This is the portal state. Neville didn't have all of the scientific language for it when he was speaking of this. He just knew about it from experience and also because he was able to decode the language of the storytellers, these ancients, these ancestors who knew that this was incredibly important and had unlocked the secrets of consciousness and wanted to pass it down to their children and posterity for generations. Okay. Now we understand that there's actually a scientific term for this. It's the hypnagogic state. We understand that it's actually a shift in brain waves. Okay, from our normal, going around and getting stuff done, which is, usually the beta brainwave state, to a high alpha theta cusp, which is that edge of falling asleep. You're very, very relaxed. Your body is completely still and you're almost falling asleep, but you're just at that little window where you're able to still maintain control of your attention. And in that little window, that's the hypnagogic state. That's also the portal. And in that portal, you can transcend this 3D earthly reality and you can move into a dimensionally greater state of awareness and then travel to the event on your timeline and experience it. Okay? So that's state akin to sleep. Neville says, feel yourself right into the proposed action. Imagine that you are actually performing it here and now because you've traveled there. So now you're doing it and it's now. It's here and now because you're now there. So there is now here, okay? And you're doing it here. You must participate in the imaginary action. Do not stand back and look on and watch it happen. You must actually be doing it. You must feel that you are actually performing the action. The imaginary sensation must become real to you. And then he gives a couple examples. He says, the proposed action must follow the fulfillment of your desire, and it must imply that the desire is fulfilled. Okay. So suppose you desired promotion in office. Being congratulated would be a natural event that your character would experience after you wrote into the storyline that the character became promoted at work. Okay. So naturally, you get a promotion. Everybody says congratulations. Your family, your coworkers, your friends, everybody who loves and cares about you is going to want to congratulate you. So it's a very natural event that you would encounter following the fulfillment of your desire, if your desire is to become promoted. Having selected this action as the one you will experience in imagination, right? As the author, you choose that this is the scene that you're going to experience. You immobilize your physical body. You induce a state bordering on sleep, that hypnagogic portal state, a drowsy state, but you must still be able to maintain the direction of your thoughts. You must be attentive without effort. Then you visualize your friend standing before you. Put your imaginary hand into your friend's hand. Feel it to be solid and real. Carry on an imaginary conversation with your friend in harmony with the feeling of having been promoted. Okay, so you're traveling in your awareness to the event on your timeline where you've already been promoted. And as a consequence of this, your friend is standing in front of you, shaking your hand and congratulating you. Okay, and you feel that that has just happened. And now you're doing something that is a result of this just having happened. And Neville really is hitting on this point because it's so important. He says, this is the difference between success and failure. Okay, right here. He says, do not visualize yourself as a third party in some distant point of space and time, being congratulated on good fortune. In other words, this is not outside the character looking at the character, right? So you're no longer being the author looking at the character. You step into the character and you do it here by making there here, and you make the future now, okay? So you're actually traveling to that event on your timeline and you're living it as the character. And he says, the difference between feeling yourself in action here and now and visualizing yourself in action as though you were watching a movie, that is the difference between success and failure, okay? Your subconscious is watching what you're doing. And when you step into it as though you are doing it right now, your subconscious sees you doing it right now. When you put it on a screen as though it is a movie or you're watching yourself from outside of yourself, you're thinking of, and your subconscious is like, oh, he's just daydreaming, okay? When you're traveling to it and doing it, your subconscious is aware that, oh, this is an event that has actually occurred. That is the difference between success and failure. Okay, this is why just daydreaming, sitting on your chair after a big lunch, and your attention's just drifting, and you're thinking of something. That's why those things don't necessarily manifest. When you're doing it with this level of power, authorship, and attention, right? This focus, and you're actually becoming it, you're embodying it. That is impressing into the receptive substance of the subconscious mind that this is real, this has actually happened. And that is what makes it manifest. Neville says the difference between these two things, thinking of and thinking from, will be appreciated if you will visualize yourself now climbing a ladder. With your eyelids closed, imagine that a ladder is right in front of you. Feel yourself actually climbing it. Okay? That's this idea of first-person action of self-predominant. Okay, so you're in your body, you've got your ladder in front of you, and you're climbing the ladder. Okay, that's the type of thing. In fact, that's actually what he teaches as being a way to test the law. Okay, so you hear someone telling you that you're the author and you can manifest anything into your reality, and you're like, I don't know about that. How do I test this? You test this by climbing a ladder in a state akin to sleep, exactly the way he just described. And you will find yourself through some mystery, you'll find yourself on a ladder within a couple of days. For the story will just write itself, and you'll find yourself on the ladder, and you'll have that realization like, whoa, I imagined this. And that's how you prove this to be true. Here's some wisdom from Neville. He's counseling and coaching us now, okay? He says, experience. My own personal experience has taught me to restrict the imaginary action, which implies the fulfillment, and condense the idea into one single act and reenact that act over and over again until it has the feeling of reality. Okay? In other words, climbing the gangplank from the tender to the ship and just doing that over and over and over again. He's not getting up the gangplank to the ship and then going and checking into his room and hanging his clothes in the closet and then going and checking out the dining facility in his imagination and then saying hi to all of his friends and then going over to the pool. I don't know if those ships had pools. I hope they did. Right? But you see what I'm saying? He's not wandering in his imagination. He's doing one thing and he's doing it over and over again. And the reason for this, he says, is that if you do not restrict it to a single act and condense it in that way, your attention will wander off on an associational track and hosts of associated images will be presented to your attention. And in a few seconds, he says, they will lead you hundreds of miles away from your objective in point of space and years away in point of time. Okay, so this is just real talk from Neville. He's saying, look, just keep it simple. Focus on one thing, okay? If you decide to climb a particular flight of stairs, because that is the likely event to follow the fulfillment of your desire, then you must restrict the action to climbing that particular flight of stairs. Should your attention wander off, bring it back to its task of climbing that flight of stairs and keep on doing so until the imaginary action has all the solidity and distinctness of reality. The idea must be maintained in the mind without any sensible effort on your part. You must, with the minimum of effort, in other words, don't force it, allow it. You must permeate the mind with the feeling of the wish fulfilled. He says drowsiness helps with the change because drowsiness favors attention without effort because you're so relaxed. But it must not be pushed to the state of sleep in which you are no longer able to control the movements of your attention. A moderate degree of drowsiness in which you are still able to direct your thoughts is preferred. Neville says a most effective way to embody a desire is to assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled and then, in a relaxed and drowsy state, repeat over and over again like a lullaby any short phrase which implies fulfillment of your desire, such as, thank you, thank you, thank you, as though you are addressing a higher power for having given you that which you desired. I know that when this course comes to an end on Friday, this is a 5-day course, right? We're just at the end of lesson 1. He says, I know when it comes to an end on Friday, many of you will be able to tell me that you have already realized your objective. 2 weeks ago, I left the platform and went to the door to shake hands with the audience. I am safe in saying that at least 35 out of a class of 135 told me that which they desired when they joined this class, they had already realized. This happened only 2 weeks ago. I did nothing to bring it to pass, save to give them this technique of prayer. You need do nothing to bring it to pass, to force it to happen. All you must do is apply this technique of prayer. With your eyes closed, your physical body immobilized, induce the portal state, a state akin to sleep, and enter into the action as though you were an actor playing the part. Experience in imagination what you would experience in the flesh, were you now in possession of your objective. Make elsewhere here, and then now. And the greater you, using a larger focus, will use all means and call them good, which tend toward the production of that which you have assumed. Okay, so that's the idea. The greater you, that's the Father in me that does the work. I just write the scene and then move my awareness there as the actor and experience it as the character. Okay. And then the greater me, the Father in me, does the work of handling and negotiating all the circumstances which tend toward that production, the production of what we have imagined and assumed. He says, we are relieved of all responsibility to make it be so, because as we imagine and feel that it is so, our dimensionally larger self determines the means. Okay, so the how, I like to say I have retired from how. Okay, the how is no longer my responsibility. I've retired from that position. Okay, I'm just the author and the actor and embody the character. And the how, that's someone else's job. Okay, meaning the Father in me. Do not think for one moment that someone is going to be injured in order to make it so, or that someone is going to be disappointed. It is not your concern. I must drive this home. Too many of us, schooled in different walks of life, are so concerned about the other. You ask, if I get what I want, will it not imply injury to another? Neville says there are ways you know not of, so do not be concerned. Okay? This is an important point. That's why Neville says, I must drive this home. Okay? It is a limitation of imagination to believe that us getting what we desire implies harm to another. Okay, that's a very limited thinking. It's very polar thinking, meaning either I can have it or someone else can have it. There's no and, right? It's a win-lose, zero-sum game. That's not how imagination works. Imagination has ways we know not of. Okay, so think about it. Imagination contains all possibilities. There's things that we haven't even dreamed of being possible that are contained within the realm, the storehouse of infinite possibilities that is the imagination. So Neville says, don't worry about that. That's not our concern. Our concern is to be the author and then to trust in the process. At this point in the lesson, Neville invites his audience to enter into a deep, long silence with him, which is an invitation to go ahead and imagine the scene and to travel in awareness to that place, okay, to actually perform this act. So this is what he says. He says, close your eyes now because we are going to be in a long silence. Soon you'll become so lost in contemplation. Remember the peak of Pisgah, contemplation, feeling that you are what you want to be, that fragrant odor of Jericho, that you will be totally unconscious of the fact that you are in a room with others, okay, because you have traveled. You will receive a shock, Neville says, when you open your eyes and discover that we are here. It should be a shock when you open your eyes and discover that you are not actually that which, but a moment before, you felt you were or felt you possessed. In these lessons I've emphasized over and over again, travel has occurred when we do this correctly. Okay, we don't come back the same person that we were before we left because we actually go and visit something. And in that place that we go and we experience, it's so real to us that when we come back, we say, I was actually there, right? It takes on that level of reality. It's not a daydream. That was travel. I traveled in my awareness through the portal and I visited that event on my timeline. Okay. So travel has occurred. And that's why he says when you open your eyes after doing that, if travel has occurred, you can actually be shocked. Oh, I'm back here. I thought I was there. But that's how you know you did it correctly. Okay. So Neville then invites the class to enter a silence period. As we are on a live stream, I will allow each of you to do this in your own space individually. We're going to go ahead and wrap up the lesson here. Neville says, I need not remind you that you are now that which you have assumed that you are. Do not discuss it with anyone, not even yourself. You cannot take thought as to the how when you know that you are already. This reminds me of Abdullah and Neville. Famous story. How can you speak of trying to get to Barbados? Neville, you are in Barbados and you went first class. Slam the door, right? You can't speak of how you got to Barbados because you're already there, right? So we can't speak of how we become something when we already are that something. Okay. There's no question of how. We've retired from the how. That's long gone. Retired meaning that part's over, right? We're not living that anymore. We're not living the how. We already are that being. Your three-dimensional reasoning, which is very limited reasoning indeed, should not be brought into this drama. Your three-dimensional self does not know. What you have just felt to be true is true. Let no man tell you that you should not have it. What you feel that you have, you will have. And I promise you this much. After you have realized your objective, on reflection, you will have to admit that this conscious reasoning mind of yours could never have devised the way. You are that, and you have that, which this very moment you appropriated. Do not discuss it. Do not look to someone else for encouragement because the thing might not come. It has come. Go about doing your Father's business. Do everything normally and allow these things to happen in your world. Wow. I don't know about you, but I feel like I'm in the room with Neville as he's giving us this coaching. It's just so potent what he is saying here. One thing I would like to surface and emphasize says, do not discuss it. Okay, so this is something that I've seen in the communities. People go back and forth on, should I tell people? Should I not tell people? Neville was very adamant in all of the texts and lectures that he left behind to not tell people. And the reason that he gives for this, if I'm going to quote him directly, he will say, people speak of their problems to lessen the problems, right? So it's like if you feel that you like have something on your chest, like you need to get it off your chest, right? So you weaken the problem, you weaken the power of the thing by speaking about it, okay? So it's a way of leaking energy, which can be very helpful if we're not having a good time, something's really bothering us. It can be helpful to talk about it so as to get the energy out, okay? And when we have a loving person, a loving friend or spouse or partner or whatever, listening to us and not holding us in judgment, but just allowing and kind of holding space for us to get it off our chest, that can be very healing. It can be very therapeutic. Okay. But it's also leaking energy. We want to do that when it's a problem. Okay. We want to leak the energy from problems. We want to talk about things that are bothering us because it will lessen their influence over us by spilling the energy, by speaking about them. Okay. Very, very nature of that same concept. We do not want to discuss our desires, particularly those which we have achieved through the portal state. Okay, in this Neville tradition of Sunday Mystery School, how do we manifest things? Well, there's this recipe for it. Whatever we go into the silence, into the deep, and achieve for ourselves using this technique, that we should not speak about. Why? Because we do not want to leak the energy of it. Okay? Now, there's actually physics. I'm not going to get into in this live stream about this. This is maybe a topic to discuss in Neville and Chill. There's actually physics involved, energetic physics, about why talking about something releases the energy for it and how other people's projections and assumptions can influence our projections and assumptions if we allow them to. Okay. But just for now, take Neville's advice, take his coaching that he's given us so lovingly, and do not speak, do not discuss it with anyone else. Make it sacred and secret and hold it as a treasure in your heart and know that it is done. And then, as he says, go about your Father's business doing everything normally and let these things happen in your world. Awesome. Okay. So that's the conclusion of lesson 1. Next week, we're going to pick up and begin with lesson 2. So lesson 1 was titled Consciousness is the only reality. That's the first principle. Okay. Lesson 2 is assumptions harden into fact. Okay. So we're going to go deeper into this idea of that which we assume to be true becomes true in our world because everything that we're experiencing, we're making out of ourselves, the only substance that we have to form anything. Right? Remember Adam's first creative act, he falls asleep and then he forms his desire out of himself. Okay. That's the metaphor told by these ancient storytellers to let us know consciousness is the only reality. Anything that we're going to experience, we must form out of ourselves. And how do we do that? Through assumption. Okay. Assumptions that are sustained will harden into fact. Okay. So we'll pick up with that lesson next week. At this point, I would like to invite anyone who is in the Zoom room, any of my mastermind members who would like to contribute to the conversation or have any questions or comments, I would invite them to do so now.
Hi.
Hello, Orlana.
Hi. Okay, so my question is, okay, so when we write the scene, right, of what we desire, the how is not supposed to be like you're not supposed to worry about the how, right?
Yes.
But like, okay, but you know what you want, like you wrote down the scene, you know what I mean? So
Yes.
so then like how could you not know the how if you wrote the scene down? You know what I mean? Like,
if you wrote
okay,
if you write the scene down, you will get it.
okay.
If you believe you're going to get it.
Right. Okay, so I guess what my question is, if you wrote the scene, you already know the how, right? You know what I mean? Or like how
I think I get what you're saying, Orlana. So
right.
let's use Neville's example of desiring a promotion in office. Okay. So
Okay.
let's say that I work for a corporation and I would like to be the vice president of production. Okay. But there's
Okay.
already someone in that seat. Okay.
Okay.
So I don't know how that person is going to leave that chair so that I can assume it. I don't know how that's going to happen. I just know that I want to be the vice president of production. Okay. So I
Okay.
place myself in the scene where I'm in the C-suite and I'm, shaking hands with all the C people, and they're saying, congratulations, you're now the director of production, vice president of production, right? I don't know
Okay.
how the person that used to sit there, moved on. I don't know if they got an offer from another company. I don't know if they, decided to take a sabbatical. I don't know if they decided to go back to school. I don't know if, their kid graduated, have to move across the country. I don't know any of that. I don't know the
Okay.
story how. I'm
Okay.
focused on that's what I want. That's what I now am.
Okay, so you're not writing the scene as far as like being that detailed, that as far as
You go straight to what would happen if
okay.
what you desired was now true. The event
Okay.
had already happened, right? So you don't have to worry about how the event happens. The event just happens. And then what would happen next? That's the
Okay.
key. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So you don't have to be as detailed.
The detail, let's be precise about this, then make a distinction. So the detail should be in the scene itself and not the story leading up to the scene.
Okay. Okay. I got it. Got it.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you, Orlana, for that contribution.
Yes.
Is there anyone else in the Zoom room who would like to contribute? You don't have to raise your hand. You can just unmute yourself.
Good morning.
Andrea, hello.
Hey, how are you?
Great. So good to see you.
Good, good. It's good to be here. I was wondering about the part of actually being the author. Is it more efficient to actually write it out, or is it more of a mental exercise?
If you are inclined to write it out, there is magic in writing it out. I would encourage
Ooh,
you to do so. Yes.
then I
Yes.
shall. Thank
Okay.
you.
Beautiful. I love that contribution. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Anyone else like to contribute?
Sure, I'll say something.
Yeah, go ahead, Natasha.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
coming at you from my grandma's house. You can see this religious stuff in the background, but on theme here. Just wanted to share my gratitude, just being new to this community. Thank you, Josiah. Thank you for everyone. I love the energy here, and it's just great to connect with all of you. So just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Natasha. Enjoy your family. It sounds like a lovely weekend there.
Thank you.
Awesome. Okay. Anybody else? Okay. We'll go ahead and call that then. Awesome. So yeah, so that's it. And I just wanted to highlight again what Andrea said there about writing it down. So yes, there is magic in writing this actually down if you are if that's your speed, if that's your style. Okay. So it's not necessary. I'm not in any way implying that it's necessary, but if you are inclined to, do it. Because there is particularly if you're writing with pen and paper, you are actually changing material physical reality through the act of putting pen or pencil to paper. Like if you think about that, like 3D reality is really actually truly being changed because there's something that didn't exist before that you just made exist in 3D physical reality through the act of putting your consciousness and altering a piece of paper using your consciousness. That's why I say there's magic in it. So it's not something that Neville taught specifically, but I've seen so much evidence that there is additional magic in doing that because it's an act of actually modifying. So you're writing it and then you go in and you experience it in that portal state. So I just want to make that clear. Beautiful. Okay. Well, that will do it for today. Thank you everyone for joining me for this Sunday Mystery School number 8. Next week, we're going to begin with the next lesson in episode 9, and I look forward to seeing all of you then. And until then, there's really only one thing to do, and that is, of course, imagine wisely from the state of being the author, and, as Neville would say, practice this every day. It is your inheritance. It is your birthright. The ancestors are with us. They are so psyched that we know this truth, that we found their stories, and that we are choosing to apply them in our everyday reality. All right, my friends, we will see you next week. Have a great one, everyone.